administration had pleaded that because it's on the internet,
Yeah.
everybody, even our enemies, can get the guns,
Right.
and they can not only get the gun, they can actually manufacture at their will.
Right.
And it's not only that you will have a handgun, but you can also have the blueprint for any kind of automatic rifles, which can be printed on the 3D printer.
Right.
And there you have, it is not marked, it is not serialized, so you can get it without any license and use it.
Metal detectors can't detect it, so you
Right.
can take it wherever you want to take it.
The only problem, well, that metal detector piece is that
The bullet itself is the only thing.
well, no, actually, the piece that is really covered by license is actually the, I think, main body, not the barrel. The mechanism, I think, is the one which is covered by under the laws. So that you cannot manufacture without a number. So, but the barrel you can then buy on internet free.
Well, I thought the
Okay.
whole point of the thing
Yeah.
was to be able to print, to have a gun that was not detectable.
Yes, that piece you cannot detect.
Well, you can't detect any of it because a gun is a
You
metal
could-
gun.
You can print the entire gun.
Right. The only
But
thing is,
what
I think, the firing pin and the bullet itself. Are
The
only
bullet
things.
is the only thing which.
Well, the
cannot
firing
be
pin
detected.
has got to be fairly stiff.
But what I heard, actually, what I also heard on NPR is that you still have to get the barrel for some of the mechanisms, not the little handgun, but if you want to print the big
yeah.
rifle, then you need the
So
barrel.
what are we trying to change here from the Obamacare to now? What are we
But
trying
it's not
to change?
Obamacare.
It's not Obamacare.
Obama said they don't want you to do it because anybody could print something and then go into a place that for which guns are forbidden, like, for example, the U.S. Congress,
Yes.
and go through all the protections and suddenly have a gun and hold everybody hostage or kill everybody, whichever they prefer.
The only problem with that, I mean, that's the argument.
Right.
But the counter to that is actually that you do have manuals available in the library right now, how to build a gun, how to build a bomb, how to build anything, and because the people have argued on the basis of First Amendment, that is, it is actually restricting freedom of speech. So on the basis of that, I forgot the name of the guy who owns the company. On the basis of that, he argued that they should not be restricted, and Trump administration agreed.
Okay.
Although the lower court somewhere had stopped.
Yeah, there was an appeal.
Yes.
And you know the NRA would not, actually the NRA should have been on Obama's side on this one, because if I can print,
Put them out of business.
yeah, there are already several gun manufacturers are already in bankruptcy.
But actually, what is also interesting that the gun manufacturers are silent on this. They're not saying a word, and so it's kind of because the guy whose company, I forgot the name of the company, but whose company is there, who is going to upload the blueprint on August 1, you can go and download it and then buy a printer and print your gun at home. How about that?
That's interesting. And of course, as you look at the history of black people, we're not so much into guns because we get hurt all the time by someone killing us with guns. And this even goes for towns and police and everything. And so we absolutely believe in the First Amendment, but we absolutely are quiet in terms of guns.
Well, actually, all, to my knowledge, all major metropolitan areas have gun restrictions, in large part because of the black population trying to protect themselves from gangs and other groups. Maybe Dallas doesn't. I'm not sure about that. But if you look at the vast majority, that's why they are anti-gun.
I mean, that's the counter argument is that, well, guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely. However,
The people with guns kill
people with guns, that's the piece that's missing.
Yes.
People
People
with
with
guns
guns
kill
kill
people.
people.
And but then that's where the Sasha argument is good. A bad person with gun will be countered only by a good person with a gun, and everybody cheers.
And then, of course, you have to understand that who is a bad person and who is a good person depends on where you're standing.
Well, that is a problem. I mean, that is the problem, actually. I
A
mean,
good person is a person who believes what I believe. A bad person is a person that doesn't believe what I believe.
Okay,
Well,
that's exactly
that-
what I
that's
was
very
saying.
easy.
and absolutely, this is where the country is today.
Yes, unfortunately, we're there. We keep fighting about even basic facts. I'm in the middle of a email argument with someone, and they're fully in belief that tariffs are unfair. We have unfair tariffs, and the U.S. never got involved in tariffs until Trump started putting them on. The fact of the matter is, the first tariffs up until 1914 were the primary source of income for the federal government. Anything you imported, they collected some money on,
Taxes.
which you got to figure out how you're going to support all the functions the government does, like the Army. So this was how they did it until we got into the income tax. So it's been around forever. The purposes as passed by Congress, I think it was 1782 or something, I may be wrong on the date, but it was in the 1780s, was revenue and to protect domestic industries. Trump is, in his various tariff wars, is trying to protect some domestic industries at the expense of a whole bunch of others, because he didn't ever believe that if he put tariffs on something, that the country would put tariffs back on him.
No, and as a result of that, our farmers are in really deep trouble now because there are countries that don't want to buy things
No, they
that
just
we've.
they're putting tariffs on our stuff to raise
Yes.
the price, so that now it would be cheaper to go somewhere else, which makes some sense. And
Yes.
since you're the only one who's working right now, you are paying
Yes, of
the
course.
farmers.
yes, I know.
Because
What is it? 20 billion? 20 billion?
that was 12.
12. Okay,
Yeah.
$12 billion.
But I mean,
So-
Which is nowhere near enough to
Yes,
Right.
it's not enough to cover.
to
But-
cover their losses.
that's neither here nor there. We, the conservative members of the American political environment, are glad to print more money.
But at the same time, you also
What group did you say?
Conservatives.
The conservatives. You've got to remember, for 8 years, everything Obama tried to do was wrong because of the deficit.
Yes.
And so now we passed the tax cut. We increased spending. The deficit is making anything Obama ever thought of doing silly compared to what it's going to be. And these conservatives, the same people who made these long-winded speeches, are suddenly, of course, well, growth will take care of it.
Yes, but as of today,
As of today, even with this last quarter was 4% growth.
yes.
One-time thing, I think, but we'll see. Even at 4% growth, it would take a couple of hundred years to make up for what it cost.
Yeah. Well, in the spirit of not believing the government, I really want to see what the audited growth is,
Oh.
as opposed to what somebody says it was.
You may be right. I have the feeling
Because,
that
you know-
it's there, and it will continue to be. It will continue on more or less the same trajectory that it was on for the past 8 years, 9 years, 8 years.
What is also interesting,
But
to
it was like 3%, you know.
No, I don't think it
was-
ever got to 3. It was a slow, steady 2 to 3 to 5 to 7. The things that might have made it go a little faster were
Vetoed.
rejected
Rejected
because
by
you know,
Mitch
we can't,
McConnell.
we can't do anything about the deficit. Deficit is the be-all and end-all.
what I was going to say is that
Yeah.
during Obama administration, the major two things were major things. One was the deficit. Number two was that all the job numbers that come out, they're all fake. And so every time they talk about how the jobs are, there are more jobs created, fewer people collecting the insurance. They would say these are all made up numbers. And actually, that's why you said that real numbers. The real numbers are something entirely different, because they are not counting this group, they are not counting that group, but actually there are a lot of people who don't have jobs.
Now,
See, which was kind of
Paul,
interesting.
You dropped out of the labor force this year because you
Yes.
couldn't find work, and so you just stopped
No, I
trying.
refuse to find work.
You refuse to.
Oh, then
See?
you're really one of those.
That's a major problem right away.
the fact that you're 74, immaterial.
But it will be quite interesting come a couple of months from now when people go to the polls and vote again, because in listening to news, reading different newspaper, and just listening, I don't hear that there are too many people satisfied with the present day company. The present day.
I agree with you up to a point.
Okay.
There's a hardcore,
That-
maybe not enough to elect a Republican Congress, but a hardcore of people who, if they call it culture wars, but for reasons that have nothing to do with economics or foreign policy or whatever, believe that Trump is their guy and he's fighting for them, and everybody else is making this stuff up. The Russia thing is made up. You name it, it's all made up, and he's really a good guy. And he and they are victims of all the elites.
Yes,
I'm not an elite.
Yeah,
not
no, that's
elite.
I mean, but that's it. That's interesting because you, although the farmers have been hit, the Trump support has not wavered.
Well, and that's the question that will
Except
come
that
up.
it's gone down. So
Yes, but
It
it's
has
still
gone down,
down.
but
But
there's a core.
that's a core,
Yeah, yeah.
which I mean, I talk to some people. I'm amazed that they don't see any of this stuff. They say they make up the news, and you shouldn't believe any of that.
Well,
That's
that's
okay.
the problem is they only watch one channel, and
Yes,
you
but
know, and all the other news organizations don't know what they're talking about.
that's it. Once you build that impression that what you said, that you listen to the news, they say, well, this is all fake news. Why should I listen to it? That's all fake. What I know is Trump is my guy.
And
That's
what they will start feeling is when the money that they get, either their pension or their salary and everything, when they start seeing that come down because of the rules that they're trying to observe, that will change. Now, the question for me is, particularly with all this dropping today of the company that we were talking about earlier, that
Facebook.
Facebook, yes. If they start losing money, and if they start losing money before September, believe me, there will be changes
But
in the government.
it's going
Actually-
to take too long.
Yeah.
In the same way as a lot of companies are being hurt by the by the tariffs. By the time that filters through and somebody loses their job and a manager or the president of the company says, I can't keep you on, you're a good guy, I can't keep you on because of the damn tariffs. If that happens, yeah, you'll get a change in votes, not all, but some. But they're not going to say that. They're going to say, I got to lay you off. I'm moving, Harley Davidson, I'm moving my manufacturing overseas.
Yeah, and actually the idea of the tariffs is the wrong way to because the problem was created by all these CEOs taking their manufacturing and moving it overseas.
Right.
That's what he should be going after, and he should be penalizing the companies that don't make their things here.
In
but
theory,
he would
he's
never
trying to do that. It's just not working.
No, he's not trying to do
Yeah,
it.
he did. He was touting in Indiana, the company that makes washer. No, that's Iowa.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But during
Air
the
conditioners.
carrier.
Carrier.
It's touting. They were going to go to Mexico, and now they're staying here. Isn't that wonderful? That's what I'm trying to do.
So they got millions and millions
Right,
of dollars
to do so.
in tax relief and moved.
And move.
Ultimately, they did move, but for the purposes of the election, they stayed. There is no good way to do it. Back in the 50s, we were encouraging a lot of our major manufacturers, do some, go to other countries, go to Europe, Europe desperately needs work, create jobs, keep the communists from taking over. So the U.S. government, under both Democrats and Republicans, was encouraging this move. And it was okay, we were doing fine because we were exporting lots of stuff anyway. Well, we now created markets to buy goods, and for some reason or another, we're upset that they don't only buy American goods. They buy goods from everybody.
During the Bush administration, George W., 50,000 manufacturing plants were closed and moved. 50,000.
Okay.
And all the people that worked for those plants are out of work or now in low-income jobs.
So no wonder Trump says all those Bush people they are dumb people. They have no clue how the jobs are supposed to be created.
But his solution is wrong.
Yeah, but that's you tell him that.
And was
and some of those
the thing with Trump is,
he was a Republican.
I mean, Bushes are Republicans.
the thing with Trump is he cannot see 2 steps ahead. There's no way that he could ever play chess because he doesn't. He has an idea of something to do, and then when things happen that he did not anticipate, which is all the time, he just kind of throws his hands up and keeps going and does more bad things. Yeah, my analysis of Trump is if you had Trump and a person who was brain dead and couldn't speak, the guy that's brain dead would be correct more often than Trump.
Because he's silent.
Because it would be
because he doesn't do the things that Trump
brain dead versus narcissism.
Yeah,
and we have our narcissistic president.
He's not just narcissistic; he's a sociopath. He doesn't care about what happens to people, and you can see that with the immigration fiasco. All these people separated from their children. The latest thing today was that there are 900 families that they're not even going to try to reunite the kids because they can't be reunited.
Because they're
You know
lost.
why? Some of them, not all necessarily, but some of them. The immigration people at the border said, sign this piece of paper and it will be better. You'll see your kids, whatever. The piece of paper said, I give up all rights to my kids. And now they're going to wave that piece of paper and have been waving it, say, why should we do this? You've given up rights to your kids. The people didn't know what they were signing. They were lied to.
and they were not allowed to have lawyers either.
Right.
Oh, the other thing is
There are no judges either.
the-
Actually.
Right. Well, they deliberately don't have any judges. Even for the legal
Yes.
asylum
that's right.
people, they
but
don't have judges.
The children under 5 have to go to court, and the judge will ask them what they want to do, et cetera, et cetera.
Under 5.
They, if they're under 5, they don't have a they don't have a lawyer,
Yeah, they may not speak English.
and
No.
and they don't speak English.
Yeah.
They may
He-
not even speak. In some
And-
cases, because this under 5 may not speak.
So,
either.
so the judge asks them questions, and gets basically no answers, and that's it.
So what happens in that case?
They lose.
And then
And what
And
happens?
then they're going to stay in the United States in foster care until they're old enough to deport.
okay.
And if they're old enough to deport, you watch what has been developed. And what has been developed is a child or children that come up feeling sad for themselves, which they should be, but also hating
Yes.
what had occurred with them, and hating our president.
Well, hating our country.
Hating
The
country.
president, they don't know enough to hate the president. They hate the
But
country.
as they get older and
Right.
older,
And
if-
think about the nightmare of people who grew up in the country, understand it, speak the language, speak the colloquial, etc., sneaking across the border with hate for the country, who might well do all the things that you were afraid their parents were going to do, and there was no reason for it. You're creating
yes,
a group of people who are deliberately going to go out to destroy you.
Well, that's why we want to build a
yes.
wall.
Except that a wall doesn't work.
the wall
Why
doesn't
not?
work.
Wall is high enough. I can't jump over it.
You can
You
go
can't
to
jump, you
the
can
best
climb.
wall in the world on the border of Israel and the West Bank,
That doesn't work. Uh-oh.
and it doesn't work.
Well,
But that's okay.
I believe Trump
We're
is going
going
to
to
build
try it
one.
ourselves,
Build his
and
own.
you know we'll get a whole bunch of illegal Mexicans to build it for us at 20 cents an hour. Pay the contractor $1,000 an hour. He'll give Trump companies a whole bunch of money, but it'll be okay.
I have been wondering what happens along Rio Grande. Is the wall going to be created along the shore?
Well, there's already walls and
but-
fences there.
But they're not good enough.
You know what? You know the real problem is
People
you
can
get all
climb
these
up.
families that come in and they go find a customs agent and say, "I want amnesty. Here I am. I crossed illegally. I need amnesty." So how are you going to get a wall to prevent that?
Well, that's why there are places where they can actually enter.
Yeah,
Except
yeah,
the ICE people don't allow people to enter that way.
right. Well,
Yes.
they
No,
stay.
very few.
They're in tent camps
Okay.
outside the border.
So they are in Mexico.
Well,
Yes.
well, yeah.
And
Yeah.
And they're not allowed. They can request asylum, and they say, okay, when a judge gets to you, and they've cut back the number of judges, even though the number of people have
But-
increased. The whole point of this thing, and in one sense, it was very intelligent, was to let the grapevine find out you can't come to the United States anymore. They ain't letting you in, and if you come, you lose your children. So that's what they're trying to accomplish, and they may conceivably have done that. The fact that they look like devils, they look like the thing that many of the Trump supporters would claim that was just an anathema.
because
Because look what you're doing to children. Look what you're doing to families.
Well, let me play devil's advocate.
okay,
No, we won't let you.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it good that you are preventing preventing the silent invasion of the country by these hordes of people we have no clue about, and they might be terrorists, they might be drug dealers, they might be rapists, and they might be even people able to manufacture bombs.
That-
Why should we let them in?
That's a good point, except that the people that are coming in they have in the United States, they commit less crime than the people who are already here.
And, oh, by the way,
That's-
And
that's-
as a percentage.
But that's
they
what you say.
request
But
asylum,
look at
you
M13. They're
investigate
killing
them.
everybody
Well,
else.
No,
M-
down in El Salvador,
M9 or
essentially,
M13?
they're killing everybody else.
M13.
There are very
M13.
small groups in the United States, and most of those are homegrown. Under, I think it was Obama, they found most of the S13 or whatever the name is,
M13.
and threw them out. And that's what started the thing down in Central America. This is homegrown. This is U.S. grown
Yeah.
organization, and we're making it stronger.
You mean M13 is
US grown.
It's not down there?
Oh, we sent it down there.
Oh,
Okay, so
What happened
I
was
didn't realize that.
there was these kids, very young, joined gangs in L.A., and then when they got deported, they were already well groomed on how to be a gang,
I see.
and then so they started that, and then they started infiltrating back.
So isn't this a better solution than collect all the gangs, throw them down into Mexico, and close the door?
That would be
No.
great, except we're not collecting the gangs. We're not doing. Look at all the news reports of people who are being deported. Most of them, well, a large number of them, are sitting in government offices doing what the court ordered them to do, and ICE comes in and grabs them and says,
yes.
"You're illegal. You're gone. No lawyer, no appeal, no nothing."
Now,
In some
now,
cases, nobody knows what happened to them until they're gone.
now we're talking about Mexico's, but suppose this was a country like Germany and another country,
Norway.
Denmark,
Norway.
Norway.
Trump says he wants people from
and-
Norway.
and
They say they don't want to be here.
I don't hear any walls. If they want to come, they can come, as opposed to, let's say, why aren't walls set up for various countries,
In the-
except
In Europe, there were walls of one kind or another.
not
and they
walls for here?
they tried to build a replica of the United States in Europe. And one of the things that is important about the United States is there aren't any walls between us and New Hampshire or Rhode Island. Free travel.
Okay.
And they tried to do the same thing in Europe. So they took down a lot of this.
Okay.
Once you're in Europe, you can go most everywhere.
Oh, yes.
Now, one of the primary reasons why Britain decided to leave was this
The
attitude
European-
that people could come in from anywhere. In their case, it was mostly the Polish who were taking advantage of the situation, not the Syrians that everybody blames. But something else that is kind of forgotten, NAFTA, this evil NAFTA. The primary political reason why NAFTA was created was we had all these Mexicans trying to come into the United States to get jobs. The theory was if you improved the economy in Mexico, they'd stay there. Why the hell would they come to the United States when they could stay home? And it worked. The people who are coming in are not Mexicans. They're people from Central America who go all the way through Mexico to come to the United States because it's better than where they are.
I mean, most of the time when you listen to the stories of these travelers, they complain about how they would be killed, their children would be killed, or their brothers have been killed, and they have escaped some kind of gangs there. And that's what is sad, in fact, in this case, that why the conditions are such in not just one country, a few of these Central American countries, that they have to run away leaving everything behind and pay these whatever those agents are called, pay them money, become indentured forever, and land here. That is the sad thing. I don't know. I don't have a solution other than pontificate.
I'm going to do devil's advocate because you got away with it, so maybe I'll do it. Part of the attitude is there's a million people trying to come in, and most of them probably good people, no lies, everything's cool, but there's maybe one or two who are terrorists or drug dealers or whatever. So if you had a barrel of apples and you knew there was one bad apple in there and you weren't quite sure which one it was, would you eat one of the apples? No, you throw the whole barrel away. And the counter to that is if you had a barrel of apples and you knew 99.9% of them were good, you might take a chance. And the country has, over the past 200 and what?
70 years, 75 years.
Well,
70 years.
Yeah. Since it's been a country, has in fact made up things about immigrants being bad, miserable for the country, changing its nature. In the early days of the country, they tried to ban Germans from coming into the country. We know about the Chinese, we know about the Irish, we know about the Eastern Europeans, we know about the Latinos. In every case, they came in anyway, and oh, by the way, they made the country great. When Trump talks about make America great again, one of the ways to do that is to open up the borders.
I mean, you have to continuously infuse the country with new talent, young talent, who can actually be innovative. And if you shut this down, we are going to become like just like Japan, or actually worse, Europe, where you are aging and just sit back and nothing is going to happen.
Right. And then you are forced to bring in the Turks and the Syrians because there's nobody else young enough to do the jobs.
That's a problem. I mean, if you look at it this way, during 1860s or something like that, when they allowed a lot of people from maybe Ireland or whatever place.
Earlier than that, it was 1830s,
they brought
40s.
them in so that they go west. They occupy, they go and frontier, create the frontiers.
Actually,
forgot.
most of the Irish stayed in the east.
But I don't know.
Well, the Scandinavians went.
They went to Minnesota and
because they had to create. They were given freedom to occupy any place.
Well,
you could occupy a homestead, and that was yours.
Well, guess what?
You can,
I like that.
As you fly across the country, you can see it. You know, these one farm after another. You know, quarter square mile. You know, 160 acres, 160 acres. Every now and then there'd be two of them joined together for 320 because one guy bought the other guy out. And
well, I can tell you that these slaves didn't ask to come here, didn't want to come here, but they went. This country went and took people and made them slaves all the time. And I'm sure there were good slaves and bad slaves, but this is what happened to this country. So right now we're not building a new philosophy. This has been going on with this country forever.
To be fair, slavery was not created by the United States. In large measure, they were probably the last major country to keep it, but it's existed forever. And hopefully what we've learned is when people are free, not all of them, but most of them work harder and contribute more.
Well, you have most of the if I remember it right, most of the African slave trade was done by Arabs, and then also the rich Africans were also trading slaves. And in the meantime, the Dutch came in and they started buying, and then the Europeans, then other people came in and they started buying, and then they found a good market here, which is kind of sad, but that's how.
By the way, the Spanish and the Portuguese, long before that, Christopher Columbus a great man, a lot of statues for him, was taken back from the New World in chains because he treated the indigenous population of South America so badly. And if it hadn't been for Isabella, Queen Isabella, he would have been executed in Spain. But she allowed him to come back.
So who complained against him? I would like to know. I've never found
It's
out.
gotta
yet.
be. It has to be some of his soldiers. Who else would there have been?
Maybe he didn't treat the soldiers right.
Well, maybe that was it. But the story I read was he killed and treated the indigenous population where he landed so badly
Well,
that he was just an anathema to the existing government.
but but later you were going to say something.
No, I was about to start a new subject,
Okay.
or orthogonal subject. You know, the song "Amazing Grace."
Yes.
It's so popular down south, and everyone says it's so wonderful.
Yes.
The
words are wonderful.
It was actually created, by a sea captain who drove slave ships.
Yes.
Right.
He was
And
the
then
slave ship captain.
he
Yes.
saw the light, and
Yes.
he saw how bad it was, and that's what it's all about.
Yes.
It's not about something else. It's God telling him you're doing the wrong thing,
Yes.
and he finally understands.
It's a religion, but it's interesting. It's interesting what it was
Genesis
that
of
he
Genesis.
was asking for forgiveness
Yes.
for.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, the South used the Bible as justification for slavery.
Yeah.
There was slavery in the Bible. They forgot about the Jubilee year and all the rules in the Bible about having to do how you treat your slaves. That was immaterial, but they did mention it in the Bible.
But but I thought it was also the slaveholders in the North also did justify that.
Well, yeah, understand, slavery was, except possibly in the Northeast,
Yes, also
was
here.
prevalent.
There were
Including
even
the-
some
it was in
slaves
the
here in
Northeast
Well,
also.
it was there, but to a lesser
Yeah,
extent,
to a lesser extent.
because it didn't have the same kind of mass agriculture that they had in the South.
Yes.
Because
So it just wasn't economically viable.
because the need was greater down south.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you had the ethos built around it that it was okay to trade slaves and do any of those things what you can do.
Any
Yeah.
property is a property, and from the beginning, America valued property at least as high as people, if not higher.
I mean, I remember it was a few years ago that I had gone to Charleston. I think it was Charleston. We were in
South Carolina.
South Carolina, and we were in a restaurant. It was maybe about 20 years ago, long time ago, and
Last week.
You're one of the younger people here,
and
so
and we were. I mean, it was amazing. We were sitting in a restaurant, and we had gone for some conference, and this was a regular Southern restaurant, and I noticed on the place what is that called, placemats. They were actually advertisements for slave trade. The placemats had the advertisement for trading slaves. And at that time I thought, wow, look at that. And that was, I now remind myself that I should have asked that I keep one of those for historical reasons. And it was kind of not normal thing for them to give that, just like you go to any restaurant, the placemat is there.
it's the same kind of advertisement. If you go to the right place, you'll see advertisement for selling Coca-Cola
Yeah,
and other things. It's
it
historical.
was similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but it's despicable.
It is despicable.
I
mean, it
agree
is despicable.
totally. But today, there would be people out there celebrating it as opposed to just saying it's just history.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I was kind of. I mean,
Now-
nobody else said anything, and I said, "It's not right." But
Now, I was reading today, and this is what interests me, and I will look into it, and it's this, that Liberia was built with freed slaves.
Yes.
So I'm quite interested in knowing what state and how did that come about.
After the Civil War, and I
This
don't have
was-
all the details, but in
This
general
was
terms,
before.
well, yeah,
Okay.
there was the U.S. set up a colony to send freed slaves back to Africa, which seemingly made a hell of a lot of sense. The American former slaves basically set up a caste system where they were at the top, and the indigenous population was horribly mistreated. And from what I understand, it's not all that much different today.
No.
So people are people. And in general, given the opportunity, they're not all that nice.
But, I mean, this is a similar example that you have these nice church people who came in and they took all the indigenous children here, and then they, quote unquote, adopted them and made them into nice Christians.
Yes.
But then they deprived them of all the heritage they were supposed to have.
Right. And this was not uncommon. I'm Jewish, and you look at Jewish history, particularly in Europe, and you find out that people were going to do you the favor, allowing you to be Christian, and if you didn't accept the favor, then you could die.
Yeah.
Ungrateful wretch.
Yeah.
It wasn't important.
So it brings us back today. What's happening today, and where are we headed?
Well, one of the things that we're headed to that is off to the side is we're finding out that Donald Trump has committed a number of crimes, having nothing to do with the political crimes. That's independent. He committed those too. But before he became a politician, I think we're going to find, Mueller is going to come out and say the Trump organization exists now because of money laundering. And that is the hold that Putin has on Trump. And what happens is the money comes in, somebody pays $4 million for a condo. A gets to come into the United States because he's contributing to the economy, and B then sells it for some less amount of money, and now it's free. Now it is washed, he can use it, and there's no record that it may have come from the Russian mafia. And this is, and the only reason that happened was that Trump could not borrow. He was such a bad businessman. He could not borrow any money in the United States. No bank would touch it. So he went to a bank that had access to Russian mafia funds, and suddenly Trump had all the money he needed.
But that's not going to affect his presidency.
No. But with some
no
luck,
or
it will
yes?
affect the fact that the moment he stops being president, for whatever reason,
No or
he's
yes?
now liable for criminal and civil suits that will make sure that he and his family will not have a penny.
You said it doesn't affect his presidency. Well, I think it does affect his presidency because he's doing what the Russians want him to do.
No, but what I was saying, what I was trying to get at, that if there are crimes committed, they are not going to affect his presidency. That's all I was saying.
Well, only if the Congress decides that they don't want to have a criminal as president.
And that's why it's
And
so
by the way, that's
important.
questionable whether
Yeah,
that
that's
will
highly
ever happen.
questionable because a lot of them are criminals to begin with.
I mean, you
Yes,
have,
but
nothing is going to happen.
and that's one reason why the election coming up is so important. So important.
Yeah, and the Republicans have anticipated that by passing all of these voter registration laws, which are against the 14th Amendment, but nobody's challenging them, which I've written letters to the DNC and et
The
cetera.
Supreme Court has said that the portion of the Voting Rights Act that enforced that is not necessary anymore because they don't commit those crimes anymore. Within a month after that decision,
But what are you talking about? Commit what crimes?
of preventing people from voting or using poll taxes or literacy tests or a variety of different ways to keep the population that would vote against the existing power structure from voting. And unfortunately, the people, except maybe in Georgia, weren't voting anyway. You go to a midterm or a local election, and 20–30% of the population, if you're lucky,
Yes.
goes out to vote.
Yeah. Well, things like removing names from the ballot because they coincide with somebody, John Jones, his name coincides with your name, and so you're removed from the ballot.
Because they can't tell the difference.
Right.
But that's, the assumption is that if in fact you go to the poll and you find out that you're not on the list anymore, you might protest. And in the next election, maybe you'll be allowed to vote.
But here in Burlington, can they not put you directly on the list, or you will have to still
This
wait?
is Massachusetts.
In
In
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, you still have to go and register. And you can't register on the day of the election.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But
They're
I
trying
thought-
to change that.
I thought-
Well, there's
country.
a variety of things going on, but
Because that's what I thought they
But
were
the-
trying to do this to registry of motor vehicles.
but
Yes,
right,
yes.
to make it easier.
Yes.
The idea is to make, in some areas, the idea is we want people to vote, and we'll make it as easy as possible for them to vote. In other areas, they don't want people to vote, and so they make it as hard as they possibly can to make for people to vote.
But the 14th Amendment says that no state shall pass any law that
Infringes.
infringes on the rights and privileges of a citizen of the United States
so.
without due process.
Yes.
So you
Right.
can't. So what that says is, to me, what it says is, if you are going to take somebody's voting rights away, you need to take that individual to court and present the case why that individual can't do it. You can't do it as a blanket order.
They've been doing it, and I think the Supreme Court has supported the idea that you can, the states can control their own voting.
State elections, but they can't do anything
And
federal.
federal, except it can't be done on the basis of sex or race.
Okay.
It can be done for any other reason.
Now,
The fact that you have white hair, they could in fact pass a law which probably would pass muster.
now, one of the things that we're undergoing now
You know.
is getting Supreme Court personnel, and it seems that our president will be able to put a lot of people on the court that may have his philosophy. I am not saying they will.
It's not his philosophy. It's he's basically said to whatever that group is, give me some names and I'll submit those.
The Federalist Society.
Federalist Society,
But-
and they're a very right-wing group that asks specific questions. President Trump is not going to ask the question whether somebody is anti-abortion, but the Federalists do.
The one question that Trump may well ask, but you'll never hear about it, is what are the limits of executive power in the Constitution? Can, when you look at the pardon power, there's no limits, right? When you look at the executive,
However,
yeah,
that was settled law. The no manners about with Nixon. It went to the
it was settled law that a corporation wasn't a person with the rights and privileges.
No, no,
But-
I'm talking about Nixon.
Nixon.
No man is above the law.
No, what they said was he had to submit. He had to submit the tapes. Nobody indicted him.
Okay.
No one tried. Oddly enough, Clinton was forced to testify. And oh, by the way, he was indicted for lying.
But doesn't that tell you that the Clinton, in comparison, looks dumber? Because if you look at Trump, he is pardoning everybody in sight, and he can pardon himself. That's what he's
That's
going
what he's
to.
claiming.
That's what he's claiming.
That's
Yeah.
what he.
And
And-
how come Clinton didn't think of that?
Because Clinton actually believes in the rule of law.
Wow.
When I don't think that I think Trump believes in the rule of law as it applies to you and you and you,
But not.
not him. I believe he truly believes that when he's elected, he has the same privileges and control that that an absolute despot.
King George VI, George the
Third.
Third had.
Yeah, and until he's no longer in office, he does what he thinks is right for him. Louis
So-
XIV said, "I am the state. After me, the deluge." And I believe Trump more or less believes that too.
Now, do you think that he will select someone who has been married 3 times for the Supreme Court?
I don't, to be perfectly honest, I don't think it matters. And the fact that Trump has been married 3 times is the problem of his wives. What bothers me is when he hypocritically says, "I believe in family values." The fact that I commit adultery is immaterial. I believe in family values. The fact that I ignore my kids when they were young, immaterial, doesn't matter. The fact that I treat your kids like garbage, immaterial, doesn't matter. I believe in family values.
But what is also
In case you were wondering, the man infuriates me.
but what is also interesting there is that his 2 wives are both immigrants.
Yeah.
They came here as immigrants.
Yes.
And they brought their parents
and
here.
that's
They
what I was
brought
going
their
to say.
parents
The
here.
chain
migration. Yeah.
I mean, that's what.
Well,
That's
criminal
probably
thing
why
to
he's
do.
against
Ironic.
it. Maybe he doesn't like their parents.
Maybe that's why he wants to take
That I
revenge
sort of
on everybody else. Revenge,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny, but maybe that's the reason.
No, I hate hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And but as much as I dislike Trump, what scares me more is Mike Pence, because Trump, I
Yes.
don't think, believes in much of anything except himself and his welfare.
And you,
Some of the things that are going on right now, I don't think Trump would have thought of or cared one way or another. For example, there was a program. If an immigrant comes in and he joins the service,
Yes.
and he serves honorably, he's fast-tracked
Yes.
to being a citizen.
Yes.
They are now finding these people who have, in some cases, served,
Yes.
and in other cases are waiting for the investigations to make sure they are who they say they are. Because we never vet anybody who comes into the country, and they're forcing them out of the service.
Actually, somebody was thrown
And
out.
then, in some cases, are deporting them.
There was one guy who was deported.
Yeah.
1 or 2 people.
oh,
So, the same, a little more publicity, but the same kind of thing. Transgender.
yes.
You can't serve because it's a horrible thing to serve in the military if you're transgender. There are transgender people who have been in the military for a number of years, who have won medals, who have served honorably,
So
who are being thrown out because they're transgender.
No, but I think he's backed down on that particular issue.
I
It's,
don't
it's-
think he did. I think that
No, he didn't back down, but the
The service,
The Pentagon.
The service ignored the order.
Okay.
yeah, but I think
because
it's
they're
now
still.
being enforced.
So-
Because originally he just put out a tweet,
Yeah.
which if I'm king, that's all I have to
Yes.
do. And the service said, we haven't seen any paperwork.
And
We're not
so-
going to do anything just because somebody said we want to see the paperwork. But I think they got around to doing the paperwork.
Oh,
So now
okay.
it's happening.
Okay.
This attitude
should-
that,
doesn't that have to be a law?
no. Well, it may
Sexuality.
need to be a law, but I think the thing about the immigrants was
Oh,
not.
immigrants.
I think that
No,
was
the
an executive
transgender.
order, but it may be wrong on that because that does seem to be something that should have a law. But I do know that that people are being
Oh, yeah.
quietly told,
They are.
"Get out,
Yes.
you're gone."
Mhm.
And do they leave?
They don't have any choice.
Yes.
You're in the middle. Either you're not allowed to put up your hand, or they say you're discharged. Go away.
Or deported.
Or
That's the end
deported.
of- that's the
There
end of
have
that.
been a couple of court cases, but they're going to take a while to get anywhere. Excuse me. So
You can imagine how somebody having to go back to Iran or Iraq or Pakistan.
after you train them to learn how to do how to be a soldier, and oh, by the way, they understand how the country works. They speak the language colloquially, and now you send them.
Back.
Now they come back in angry.
Yes.
Oh,
These,
yeah.
these
Oh,
are the kind.
yes.
This is exactly what we want to do to make America safe again.
Yeah, create terrorists.
Yes.
I mean, we did create Osama bin Laden. He didn't just pop up from the heavens. He was a creation of
Right.
U.S. government.
Well, we guessed wrong. We said, okay, you fight the Russians,
Oh,
and
we
then when
guessed
you're
right.
when you've driven the Russians out, okay, fine,
You disappear.
go away. Everybody's happy. Well, it turned out he wasn't so happy, and the people he wasn't happy about had only peripherally had to do with us. He didn't like the Saudi family running things, and we were the ones who were propping them up, so that he came after us.
Oh, yeah.
Well, also he didn't like the U.S. base in
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia.
Right. Because there were non-Muslims
Yes.
there. There were a variety of things, and by the way, Osama probably would have found a way to be a terrorist
Anyway.
without our training.
Yeah.
But we made it easy.
I mean, we gave him all the machinery which he could use freely and
Right.
trained.
Right.
Provided him enough training
He-
so he could train other people.
Right. The problem, and I really don't understand why he didn't do it, we gave him all these Stinger missiles, and then he didn't shoot down U.S. airplanes.
But he
Thank
did-
you.
he-
Thank you.
But he did have those.
But he had them. Yeah. He had them. They were given to him so he could shoot down Russian helicopters, which he did.
Which
So
they did, yeah.
he obviously learned how to do it.
I mean, that's the tragedy of supporting Pakistan from here, that you have 1/3 sent to one set of mujahideen, 1/3 sent to another set of mujahideen, 1/3 they kept for themselves. So that's how the arms were distributed.
And that was part of the pattern. I mean, Pakistan was how you got the stuff to Afghanistan.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, life is a hell of a lot more complicated than we are led to believe. And there are no simple answers to anything. We got rid of this horrible Saddam Hussein, and we opened things up for Iran. And now Iran is, quote, worse than Saddam ever was. We didn't think it through.
I mean, the same thing happened with Gaddafi. Gaddafi had renounced everything,
Right.
and then
He was supporting us in the Middle East. He
Yes.
was actually fronting for us.
and we made sure that he was essentially slaughtered.
Well, I will give the U.S. a little bit more credit there. The revolution was going on. The Arab Spring
Yes.
had morphed into a revolution, and Europe was worried that if it was successful, what would happen to all the oil and gas So they were supporting the rebels, and they conned us, conned. They got us to help out. All we did was provide intelligence. We did not, despite what some Republicans say, go in and get rid of him. But we provided intelligence, and he eventually lost.
Well, what I think is that U.S. could have at least prevented him from getting killed the way he did. Was that